All right, in this exercise, we're going to take what we learned in the last exercise. That's our system of systems map. These are all of our departments inside of our organization. We've got our core on there. We call this 4 core, then 4 more. You might have more than that, I understand completely, but this is just for purpose of getting you thinking in a systems way. So for me, I ranked R&D technology as my #1 problem inside my organization where I felt the most pain. So the next step here is going to be what we call the Quickmap. Now, process triage is a 90-day program where there's some work where we work with your team to establish some goals and determine who the right people are inside the organization to participate in a 1-day workshop. And then we do some planning, and then we do 90 days of accountability and reinforcement to make sure that the things that were uncovered in that workshop get resolved inside the company so that you get the value out of the work and that you can improve your process. But so the next step here is what we call Quickmap. And I'm going to show this to you. I'm going to switch my camera over. Now, there's a couple different ways that you can look at this. If you have 8.5 by 14 paper, it's much easier to see and to read. And I would encourage you, if you're going to do a few of these or you're going to do this with your team, you want to do that. Here's the QR code for the instructions that you're watching right now. So you can share that with others so they can do this as well. This is the process triage protocol that we'll be using. Here's all the instructions. And here's our map. So if you're printing this on 8.5 by 11, it's a little bit smaller. It's still workable and functional. You'll just notice that the triage is a little, for older eyes, it's a little harder. So we also have this on the website too, that you can download and use in this process. But let's go ahead and get started. I'll walk you through how to triage a process. And this is a 30-plus-year-old methodology created by one of the largest telecom companies in the world. It has been performed thousands of times, 2,500 times in the workshop environment, and tens of thousands of times like this. We do these every single week with organizations, and it's very enlightening. And for many people that go through what you're about ready to go through, this is your first experience with systems thinking, with being able to really look at something and to actually strategize around how it works. And this is really called abstraction. And if you think about it from back in the caveman days, if we were out on the plain and we ran into a tiger, it would be a terrifying event. And whoever was the slowest runner among us would not come home for supper that night. Now, one night in the cave, by the light of the fire, somebody took a piece of charcoal and went up to the side of the cave and they drew a picture of a tiger on the wall. And for the first time ever, we could see a tiger and not be terrified by it. Because anytime we saw him in real life, we were terrified. But we could see that tiger and we weren't terrified. And we could stand there shoulder to shoulder and we could look at that tiger and we could say, well, that's the sharp eating parts, right? We don't want to get close to that. But back here doesn't look too scary. Joe's really good with big smashing rocks. We could put him up on a ledge. And Jan is our fastest runner, so she can try to outrun the tiger. And then everybody else gets sharp, pointy sticks. And when the tiger comes around the corner, bam, we can take care of it. We couldn't do that before. We couldn't abstract. That's what mapping is so powerful at doing. This is the only method that allows us to go back to those sort of pre-modern human roots and do what our ancestors did to solve problems. So let's walk through this quick mapping exercise. So if you want to print those out, and again, 8.5 by 11, if that's what you have, or if you have 8.5 by 14 paper, it'll make this much easier. What you want to do first, we want to set a goal. Okay, so what is a capability goal? Well, everything has to be capable of something. So what do we want this process to be capable of? I'm going to go very high level. You can, if you would like, based upon your systems of systems map, pick the process where you feel the most pain. I'm just going to go really basic and do lead to cash. It'll just be easier for this process. But the first step is to set a capability goal. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to write out a goal. There's instructions on the back here. Let me flip this over. So there's instructions here, capability goal. What is a capability goal? Well, it is a declarative statement that describes what this process must be able to sustain. For instance, something like 1,500 widgets a day passing a 98% quality check by the end of Q2 2024 or Q1 2024, whatever that might be. So the first step is you want to write that out. I'm going to say lead to cash. So I'm going to say we need to be able to get 10 new customers a month. I'll do this quickly. At $10,000 per customer with let's just say an NPS, net promoter score, with an NPS of 9.0 or above by Q3 2025. Now, why do I give that much detail? Because I need to know what the detail is. I've got to know what the goal. I can't hit a goal that I don't know what it is. So I have to know what the goal is so that we can try to attain it. So the first goal is setting a process capability goal. Now, the next thing we're going to do is action result mapping. Action result mapping is a little bit different than traditional process mapping. Many people that have been around process mapping understand process maps to be work instructions. Every single detail of every little tiny thing that happens. Joe clicks this button, then he downloads this form, then he fills out lines 4, 8, 9, and 11. That's not what we're doing right now. There is a time and a place and a purpose for that kind of work, particularly if you're getting ready to go into automation like AI. But for right now, we want to do high-level action result mapping. Actions and results look like this: a noun and a past tense verb. Why do I use a noun and a past tense verb? Well, a past tense verb usually ends in ed. And when I'm thinking about actions results mapping, the lines are work. This is somebody doing something. The circles are completed segments of work, meaning that when I am done, order created, whatever those things might be, when I'm done mapping this out, I will have a to-do list of all of the major to-dos from whatever my trigger was. We're going to go lead here to cash, the invoice sent, we'll just call this. And what we will have is a pathway that shows how we get from the lead on through the cash. Now, I'm going to tell you a little bit about this type of mapping because it's important to understand. Sorry, I got to give myself a little drink there. Okay, so it's critical to understand that we are looking at this with a lens. And because I gave you 10 bubbles, almost without exception, you will fit that process into 10 bubbles. If I was to give you 20 bubbles, you would have gone a little deeper. If I was to give you 30 bubbles, you would have gone a little deeper. That's okay. It's the beauty of action results mapping is that you can move up and down. And for this process, we are trying to stay very high level here. This isn't a one-day workshop. This isn't the process triage methodology that we do in person. This is a little bit different flavor. So that's the next step. Spend a few minutes, go through and write out a noun and a past tense verb. Almost without exception, that means it's going to end in ed. So sent is a past tense verb. So I always write senteted as a little joke, but write out what the steps are in that process. Now, some of you might have an extra step. You might have to X one out or something. That's fine. Maybe you have a little branch there someplace. Go ahead. This is your map. You can work on it however you'd like to do, but you need to get from your lead, your trigger onto your final destination, your milestone. So go ahead and spend a couple of minutes doing that. All right. So the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to identify pain. Now, pain is a tricky thing in business because it is something that slows us down from doing the work in the most efficient way possible. Pain is something that has to be quantifiable. It can't be a resource constriction. It can't be an individual. It has to be something that is quantifiable. It regularly happens, and it has to be something that is happening that should not be happening in a normal process. If I look at this process and I say, oh, this is everything that's going on here, I might have a little call out here that you can see the little dog leg. Well, let's switch the camera in here. Have a little dog leg out. 50% of the time, information is missing from the form. Would that slow you down? Of course it would. And regularly, daily, I look at maps that say things like 40% of the time we get to the job site and we have the improper tools. 25% of the time we show up and permits haven't yet been issued. 50% of the time we build the product for the customer and we find out later that that wasn't the customer specifications. These are the kind of things I'm talking about. Things that are happening that should not be happening. Now, based upon your role and level in the company, I can almost tell you what your pain points are going to be. If you are an executive, it will be things like brand and balance sheets and budgets. It'll be bigger things. If you're a middle tier manager, you're going to talk about resource constrictions. You're going to think about systems that you need help with, about how you need more people. But what we really want to understand is the people who should be doing this process mapping are the frontline people, the people who are engaging with the work on a daily basis. Their pain will be quite different from executive pain and from middle level manager pain. Their pain is going to be the observation of things that are occurring, that are happening, that should not be happening. So the next step is think of 3 to 5 pieces of pain. Take a pencil or a pen, draw a little dog leg, write out that pain. I like to start it always with a percentage. 100% of the time X occurs. You know, I want to know the percentage, because if it's 1%, I might prioritize it differently in the next steps. Okay, spend a moment or two and go ahead and do that next. I'm going to black out my screen here so you can pause. All right. So we've got our map. We have our process capability goal. We've identified pain in the process. Next step, we're going to triage that pain. Triage is the French word for sort. And triage in a medical capacity is done with something like this. These are triage cards, and they are given to a nurse or doctor in a mass casualty event. And that nurse or doctor has tags that are associated with this. And sometimes they'll write it on your forehead if it's a real mass casualty event. And there are 4 different tags. We're only going to use 3 for this process. Black means this person does not need help because they are deceased. Red is immediate. Yellow is delayed. You got to handle the reds first, and then the yellow will get there. And then green is a minor. This is a walking wounded. We use the word triage because we want to sort, we want to go through determining what they are. Does this need immediate attention? Can it wait a little bit? Is it a walking wounded? We want to do that first, and then we will rank finally and figure out which ones are which. So how do we do this? Well, we look at our process capability goal, we look at our pain, and we sit down with someone else. We can do it ourselves, but it's nice to do it with a partner. We sit down across from them. We each have our map, and I say, hey, what's your process capability? Well, mine is to get 10 new customers at $10,000 per customer with an NPS of 9.0 or above by Q3 2025. Okay, tell me about your pain. Well, 50% of the time when we get the buyer's information, there's information missing. So my first question using this, does that inhibit our capability goal? Yeah, it does. Okay. Do we know the most likely cause? No, I don't know why. Well, then if it's no, somebody needs to analyze why that's happening. Very, very simple. And we can then just write down here, analyze, analyze why 50% of the time this is happening, and write it out. Okay. So then we go to our next one. Well, what's the next one? 100% of the time X occurs. Does that inhibit our capability goal? No, it doesn't. Well, then it's not a pain. Then set it aside. That's not relevant to this process. It might still be relevant to the company and the organization, just not relevant to this process. But usually 99% of the time, these are relevant to it because this is the process we're working through and everybody understands what the capability goal is. So here we go. 100% of the time X occurs. Does that inhibit our capability goal? Yes, it does. Do we know the most likely cause? Yeah, we do. Do we have an existing best practice? You know, I think about 5 years ago, okay, that's not a best practice. Best practices are not something that you have to be able to easily find them. When I talk to people about best practices, I like to say, look, will this require an archaeological dig to find that SOP? If it does, that is not a best practice. A best practice is something that everybody knows. Everybody is aware of. Everybody that touches that part of the process knows how that works and is excited about it and wants to get it done. So that's what what we want to do here. So we need to design and implement according to the protocol. We do know the most likely cause. Do we have a best practice? No. Design and implement a best practice. Simple. Write it down. Design A best practice too. Now, if we had a best practice, the next question is, does that practice need training or learning? If there is any pause whatsoever in that question, to the answer of that question, the answer is no. Because almost without exception, people think, well, we sent like 3 years ago, we sent a quick video. No, that doesn't work. This is about training is about the reinforcement of something. When you are potty training a small child, you do not just hand them a roll of toilet paper and point in the direction of the restroom. You have to reinforce that training. So has everyone been trained? No, not everybody. Great. Then what do we need to do? We're going to train everybody on that best practice. And then finally, if everybody in the organization has been trained, then we need to reinforce that best practice. That's what we have to do in order to get through it. So the protocol is right here. It's a little different than this. This is our workshop protocol, slightly different, but all the questions that I just went through are the same. It's just a level of effort and things that change a little bit. You're going to walk through that. Does it inhibit our capability? Do we know the most likely cause? Do we have an existing best practice or method or tool or procedure? Does that need learning or training? And then finally, if not, we want to make sure that we enforce that. Now, the final step here, we have our remedies. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to analyze this. We're going to design this. We're going to train on this. We need to enforce this better. Finally, take a look at it. Okay, this was my first, second, third, and fourth. How am I going to rank these? You know what? This one's number one. Most important, second most important, third most important. Now, here's the final piece. Go do this stuff. These things aren't very hard. I mean, think about it. 50% of the time, information's missing from the form. Go out and find out why the information is missing from the form, and then design a best practice, train everybody on it, and enforce that training. This is how the protocol works. You will probably find some surprises in here just doing this on your own. You'll be shocked at what you'll find in a one-day workshop and a 90-day sprint with us on doing this around your processes in your organization. That's the process triage protocol. This is the Quickmap exercise. Please, if you have any questions, if you'd like to book a session for your organization to start to transform your process, your systems, we're here to help. If you're on the journey of continuous improvement and you're making a commitment to doing 8, 10 processes a year, and you're like, we're going to do this thing, we're going to fix these problems, we're going to gain a competitive advantage, we're going to remove the pain from our frontline people, we're going to reestablish a level of communication between executives and the frontline, and we're going to fix these problems. If that's the case, reach out to us about getting somebody inside your organization certified in the methodology. We have an entire protocol. It's got all these cool custom 3M assets where you can build out these maps with teams, then take pictures through our app, upload them to us. We build all the custom map assets for you and ship them out to your location. These are 20 or 25 foot long process maps that people can stand there side by side and they can abstract. They can look at things and they can say, you know, if we just did this a little bit better, it would probably solve this problem. This is the method of process triage. I'm Derek Maines, the process